Definitely need to get some water. You guys want this?
If you can move it over just so it's more to the side. I knew that was gonna happen.
Yeah, I was afraid of that too. Wow, we got a good sized group. Right there, I guess is fine. I'm just gonna get something to drink. I had a.
Coffee?
Yeah.
It might be cold, Brad.
That's water.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thanks. This works. Oh, cool. Thank you. All right. Thanks,
Dave, I'll stay for the gist of this.
Right.
What's that?
What, you weren't gonna drink more file?
No. I don't even drink caffeine anymore. Are you ready?
Yeah, I have to put a little bit early because I'm having the shot. 1%.
This one? Just like me.
This is a dangerous picture.
Okay, this will be.
The leader?
Do we want to put you?
Move me over here.
Maybe, how do you guys want us to balance out one on each side?
However you want to do it.
Like to do it.
However you want to do it.
You're in charge.
They're letting
Yeah,
you be
that
the
might be
boss.
good. I'll let you be over here.
You know.
And we'll kind of center it that
Who's
way.
there? I can't see her.
Actually,
Yeah.
just those 3 chairs. That,
These things,
are
okay.
you going to have someone else sit,
No.
Brett? Okay.
If there's the two of you?
So,
Can't
there'll
go
be
in the
3
end.
of us.
Yeah, we'll have you in the middle, please. Thank you.
All right. I'm not gonna bother with this. Can you just throw this over in my kitchen? Okay. Ready? Ready?
Ready as I'm ever gonna be.
You get kind of close.
Would you mind putting the chalkboard mic a little closer to you, please? There we go, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
Okay.
I think we can.
All right, you guys good?
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Brad Gage of Brad Gage Law, and we're here today to talk about the tragic and horrifying death of Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrummer. He was murdered on September 16th, 2023, and yesterday we filed a governmental claim, which is a precursor to a lawsuit. That claim was brought against the County of Los Angeles. The county did not pull the trigger. That was done by the suspect, allegedly Mr. Salazar. But what the county did is help to facilitate this tragic and needless death. That's why we are here and why we are bringing suit against the county as well as the alleged murderer. Here's what the county has done. For several years now, the county has not provided funding for the sheriff's department. Indeed, I was called this morning by former Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who explained to me how the Board of Supervisors was not providing funding that they needed for critically short deputy staffing levels. There's also statements from individuals on the Board of Supervisors, including Catherine Barger, in which she has indicated that there was a concern for the safety of the deputies because of critical short staffing levels. In the case of the Palmdale Sheriff's Station, we know that about 41% of the PM shifts were being filled by officers on overtime. We also know that several of the cars were not being sent out. The reason for this is multiple. First, there's not enough deputies. Secondly, by having so many deputies working overtime, it creates a danger to the deputies and a danger to the community. And this case is about public safety. It's about protecting the community. It's about protecting deputies. It's about making sure that members of law enforcement get to go home at night. Also, it's about protecting individuals that are in the community from needless harm. Because when you have deputies that are working who are exhausted, who are working 140 hours or so of overtime in a month, on top of full shifts, with the commutes that they have to go to and from home, they cannot do their jobs well. They cannot think clearly. They cannot protect themselves. And when they have to make split-second decisions of whether to pull a trigger or not, they can't do that as well as they could if they were well rested. The result of that means people get shot when they don't need to, people get killed when they shouldn't, and that's both members of the community and members of law enforcement. So that's one of the other things that this case is about. We are here to help bring community awareness to a problem that the department has known for years and the Board of Supervisors has known for years. They've spoken about it here and there, but it hasn't come out in the way that we now see. It hasn't resulted in the tragic and needless death of an aspiring young man who had worked 4 years for the sheriff's deputy, providing for protecting and service of our communities, helping to take care of all of us. Ryan was a training officer. He demonstrated excellence. But because of being forced to work so much overtime, he was unable to see the danger signs of what occurred to him. Here's what we know. We know that the accused murderer pulled up behind Ryan. Then he pulled to the side of Ryan. He pointed a gun at Ryan, and then he shot him. During those time frames, had Ryan not been so exhausted from having worked Friday and then a double shift on Saturday, he would not have been unaware of the tragic situation that was about to befall him. Ryan would have been able to take evasive action. Ryan would probably be here today, but for the intentional actions of the county in forcing officers to work so much overtime, knowing of the dangers, knowing of the risks. The county used to have a maximum of about 90 hours per month that an officer could work overtime. That was part of a memorandum of understanding, which is an agreement between the county and the unions. But that was abrogated. It no longer is the limitation. But there was a reason why 90 hours was the maximum. It was for the safety of the deputies and the safety of the public. Last night, there was a little bit of coverage on this case, and the outpouring of information that came to me last night and this morning was truly phenomenal. Deputies have texted me and communicated with me saying how we're all suffering. We all need a break. And they are calling upon the union and us and the department to take action to protect other deputies so that no other family has to spend Thanksgiving without their loved son. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the parents because they are the ones who are truly suffering. They'll say a few words to you, and then I'll be able to follow up and answer any questions that you have. You want to start? Come on over here.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Michael Klinkenberger. I'm the father of Ryan. I'm a retired 32-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I worked 3 years in patrol as a field sergeant. My number one goal as a field sergeant was to ensure that those deputies went home every night, and I can't do that for my son anymore.
Good morning. My name is Kim and I'm Ryan's mom. I don't want any parent to ever have to sit at a Thanksgiving or holiday dinner with someone missing like we had to this year. I miss my son so very much. On September 16th, at 4 o'clock was my last message to him. We were planning his wedding as he was engaged 4 days prior. 3 hours later, I was planning his funeral. My family comes from 4 generations of law enforcement. My grandfather was a retired captain. My dad was a retired captain. My husband, a retired lieutenant. Ryan, and our other son is a deputy sheriff for Ventura County. So we are very familiar with law enforcement. We've dedicated a lot of our life to law enforcement. I wish I could go back to September 16th.
As you can see, the fate of Ryan has devastated this family. And it should not have happened. This is a tragedy where the Klinkenbrumers were unable to celebrate Thanksgiving with their son. And the fact that their other son works for the Ventura County Sheriffs is quite illustrative. The Ventura County Sheriff's Department does not force its deputies to work these kinds of long hours. The Ventura County Sheriff's Department knows that when you have such overtime where individuals are so fatigued that they can't see the danger signs to protect themselves and others, that it's a danger to the community that is unacceptable. So they're an excellent contrast. I had discussions with 3 different very high-ranking individuals of law enforcement. Alex Villanueva gave me permission to use his name, that's why I've used it. But I also had another member of the LA County Sheriff's Department, the very highest of ranks, and a former LAPD police chief. And they all said the same thing essentially, which is, we've known for years there are dangers in having officers work such long overtime. We've been talking with the boards of supervisors and the city council about the need for funding, about the lack of adequate staffing, and how it's likely to lead to death and injury for deputies and death and injury for members of the public. So it was an intentional decision by the county not to take care of its deputies, and that's why we're bringing the suit. We're hoping that this public awareness and a large demand for recovery will get attention and make some positive changes and let the next family with the deputy able to celebrate Thanksgiving with them rather than having to mourn their loss. It's a tragedy.
Brad, you mentioned there used to be an agreement, memorandum of understanding between the county and ALADS, which is the deputies union, putting a limit, a cap of 90 hours on any 1 month for overtime. Why was that agreement abrogated? Who actually, when did that fall apart?
As I understand it, that agreement ended in the last year or two, and I don't know why it fell apart. I don't know why the county and the union agreed to eliminate so much in the way of protection from too much overtime. You'd have to ask ALADS and the Board of Supervisors on that.
Is there anything novel about this particular type of suit? I mean, it seems to me like literally you're going in here and telling the Board of Supervisors, rethink your budgeting, rethink your hiring to get rid of this risk to your employees.
Well, we are. That's a big problem. When you don't take care of the budget to fix things that you know are wrong, problems happen. If DWP doesn't have the proper budget, you get leaks like we saw in the news last night where, you have flooding. So planning first when you know of a problem, and then afterwards avoiding those problems is the goal that we should have. And this lawsuit, we're hopeful, will help to prevent other harm, bring some justice to the Klinkenbrummer family.
Brad, can you talk about the nuts and bolts of this? So this claim has been filed. It also names the LA County Sheriff's Department specifically in the city of Palmdale and seeks damages of $20 million. What happens from here?
What we've done is we've done a governmental claim, and we are seeking $20 million because if you think about the death of a loved one, the amount we're asking for is less than a year of contract for basketball stars to play a game. And I submit to you that family members are worth more to their families than basketball players are or football players are to us for our entertainment. So that's why we've made such a demand, and we think it's low. As far as the nuts and bolts, after we file this governmental claim, which is a precursor to a lawsuit, the county has 45 days to either accept it or reject it. Once that time period elapses, we can then bring a lawsuit. In a lawsuit everyone's familiar with, you file a complaint in court, and then the other side can make challenges to that complaint. There's various legal actions they can take. We conduct what's known as discovery. So we send out written questions, we ask for documents, and we take depositions, which are statements under oath of people in the know. Once all of that is done, sometimes in the middle of it, sometimes at the end, parties often sit down and have a settlement conference or a mediation to see if they can resolve things. Here, part of the resolution we'd like to see is a change in the policies and practices of the Sheriff's Department to limit the overtime to protect the deputies and the community. And then after that, if you don't resolve a case, you go to trial, where you have a jury of 12 individuals plus some alternates that will hear evidence with the judge ruling on what is admissible and what isn't, and then a verdict is reached. After that, you can have appeals.
I'm wondering if the parents can comment on being a law enforcement family, what it's like to now be suing.
I'll be honest with you, it's probably the last thing I ever thought in a million years I'd be doing. Like I said, it's 4 generations. I actually worked for the Sheriff's Department for a short period, 10 years. It's all I ever knew. It was family, and it's hard, and it's nothing I ever wish on anybody, because it's reopening wounds and starting all over again. But it needs to be done. I can't see another family go through this. Those men and women that put that badge on, put it on with pride to do the best job they can, but they need to have the working conditions to do the best job that they can.
So Kim, it's way bigger than money.
It's way bigger than money, to be very honest with you. Money's only part of it, a very small part of it, to be quite frank with you. It's about change. It's about change in the way these guys are treated, men and women, working conditions. They can't go on the way that they're being treated right now. It can't happen.
And Kim, to your point, or to the point made earlier, I mean, you believe if Ryan had not been worked all weekend long, he would have been aware enough to respond.
I fully believe that if my son was not overworked, that he would have been in a better position to not be where he is today.
I think I can address that as well, having worked for the department. Ryan was a field training officer, which it takes an extraordinary amount of skill and ability to be selected. So for several years, he taught brand new deputies to patrol area awareness, threat assessment, and how to properly respond to a threat, all of which didn't happen. So it's very clear that I think to us, had he not been fatigued and exhausted, he would have responded safely, and he'd be here today.
You know, money is important because that is how we as a civilized society helps to make sure that individuals pay for their civil wrongs. But the problem is when someone is killed, money cannot bring back a life. But money can send a message to the county that they need to make a change. They need to revisit their policies and protect their employees.
Brad, discovery is one thing. You know, most of the time it's tough. You go through discovery to find facts that aren't readily available. In this case, are you in the opposite corner, literally? Your phones are you're probably going to have people lining up around the block to be able to testify as to the conditions related to overtime and the risks involved.
Well, we certainly have a lot of statements with admissions by Sheriff Luna and members of the Board of Supervisors that they know of these dangers, and yet they haven't taken action. So we do have that kind of information, and to get 3 individuals that were at a chief of police or sheriff's level contact me, speaking to me within a few hours of a much smaller discussion of the news than we have today, I think is pretty extraordinary, and it does speak volumes to the information that was already out there. And yet, knowing of these dangers, the county intentionally carrying it out, and this is the result, which is terrible.
Brad, as just some background, just so everybody knows, understands how deputies are scheduled for their watch shifts. So are they given 8, 10, 12-hour shifts? And when they're requested to work overtime, is it involuntary that they have to work overtime?
I can speak to some of that, and Mike might be able to answer more.
Okay.
It sort of depends on the law enforcement agency and the job that you have. Sometimes you have an 8-hour day shift, so you're working 5 days a week. 5 days a week might be Wednesday through Sunday, it might be at 2 a.m., but 5 days per week. Other times you have a shift that is 4 days a week and it's 10 hours per time, and other times you have a shift that is 12 hours, which gives you a 36-hour week, and then you have a payback period. So those are the way that deputies and others often end up working. If you have a double because you're being forced to overtime, you're supposed to be limited to 16 hours in a day because of the knowledge of the dangers that can occur if you're working too many hours. It's not even safe to drive. So a deputy can kill someone just by, or themselves, by falling asleep at the wheel. With that said, there are times that members of law enforcement have been forced to work even 20 hours in a day that I've seen in my career. Usually that's an emergency situation, but not always. The problem with the county is because of poor planning, lack of budgeting, and lack of hiring, they've created their own emergency situation. And you don't get a pass when you know something is dangerous, and then you say, oh, now it's an emergency. You don't get to do that. It's like you don't get to drink a ton of alcohol, barely be able to walk, go to your car and drive and go, oh, gee, I couldn't drive before I hit somebody because I was drunk. Well, you create that situation for yourself as well. It's the same situation. The county knows of the dangers, and they intentionally allow those dangers to continue. And it's no different than if the county decided that they were going to go drink a few fifths of alcohol, jump in their cars, and race on the freeway. The consequences are foreseeable and known that eventually tragedy is going to happen, even if it doesn't happen the first time.
Who has the ultimate authority, though? I mean, there comes a point to where, sure, your sergeant, your lieutenant says, I need you to work 4 hours, 6 hours. there comes a point when you say, if I do this, I'm gonna wind up injured or dead. Does the deputy have the ultimate thing to flat out say, boss, I'm sorry, I can't do it?
No, if a deputy,
Or they just don't take that step?
deputies, if they're being told you have to work, if they don't work, they can get fired for insubordination. So it's a terrible choice where a deputy either has to say, I'm going to follow these orders and hope not to have a problem, or I'm going to get fired and not be able to feed my family. It's a terrible choice, but the ultimate authority rests with the sheriff and the board of supervisors, because the sheriff has to seek the deputies and the budget, and the board has to approve it. I know from talking with Alex Villanueva this morning, he indicated to me that several times he did ask for more funding from the board and it was denied. So he knew of this problem and he was trying to get it resolved, and then it wasn't getting fixed.
So
So
you're telling us that if a deputy, if a sergeant or his higher up tells him, hey, look, I know you've been working excessively lately, but today I need you to work a double shift, that deputy does not have the right to say no?
the deputy cannot say no when they're being told to work. They could show a medical excuse, but that means they'd have to get to a doctor and hopefully have time to go see a doctor between the mandatory overtime. And one of the things that the county might say is, well, gee, deputies were volunteering for a lot of this overtime. And that is an interesting but also misleading statement, and I'll explain why. The deputies, at least at Palmdale, were being forced to work overtime. If they did not sign up and volunteer, then they would be called at home on the day off. If they were celebrating their child's birthday or other special events, they're told, you have to come in now. We're down on people power and we need you to come in. So they might be able to say, well, gee, some of the deputies volunteered, but they knew that they had to work at least 90 hours in a month of overtime, or they would just be called on a day off. So the best that a deputy could do is say, well, gee, I want off this day for my daughter's birthday. I want off this day for my son's graduation, and plan for that by volunteering for overtime on other days.
Lieutenant, Mrs. Kung, my sympathy to your family. I'm going to have to ask Brad a couple of legal questions, so I hope you know that in no way am I being dismissive to what you're doing and your feelings. But Brad, I have to ask you, so in 2009, there was a case called Mueller versus the County of Los Angeles. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but my understanding is that case law establishes immunity for government agencies when it comes to matters like this. How are you going to get around that case law?
Well, I'm not familiar specifically with Mueller, but I am familiar with the fact there are immunities. And immunities say, basically, the law allows a claim against a governmental entity, but there are certain exceptions known as immunities, and then there are exceptions to those exceptions. And so we believe that we will have the exceptions to the immunities, and we'll look at the Mueller case and everything else.
Again, if you could just bear with me. Again, I'm not trying to hurt you or make this worse for you, but I have to ask Brad, were this lawsuit to move forward and you're not successful and the judge slapped it down, your clients are going to be on the hook for legal fees. Have you had that conversation with them about that?
Well, first of all, legal fees are not something that happens from a lawsuit as a general practice. There are sometimes case costs. It depends on the legal theory as well.
Forgive me, the legal fees for the county.
Legal fees for the county are attorney's fees, and those are not recoverable as a general rule. Sometimes there are costs that are recoverable within limits, and that's found in CCP Section 1032. But those are limited, and so the risk isn't there. But as far as anything I discuss with my clients, that would be an attorney-client communication, and I'm not about to wave it to the world on a press conference. That would be bad lawyering.
Brad, can you talk about where Ryan was in the shift at the time? Is that something you can disclose?
I know that it was around 6 p.m. or so that he was murdered, but I don't know the exact time he started. I don't know if you know.
Kim had some more.
He started at 4 o'clock,
4 a.m. or 4 p.m.?
4 p.m.
And he,
That
Go
was Friday. He started Friday at 4, or Saturday at 4 p.m. He had worked a double on Friday, PMs to early mornings. He got off at, I believe, 8 o'clock in the morning, came home, slept for a couple hours, and was back at the station to start his shift on Saturday. And then he was killed at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. So he was only 2 hours into his shift.
Are you folks upset with the law enforcement union? Do you believe the union has done enough to protect deputies? Or have they folded to the county? What's your thoughts about the union?
To be honest with you, I don't know enough as much about the union, and I'm not going to speculate on what they've done. As far as support for the family, the union has been phenomenal. But I'm not going to speculate on what they've done as far as that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, there has been a lot of support from the department and others, which we're appreciative of, and they want to go after the killer, and we certainly support that, and we're willing to be helpful in every way. But that doesn't change the fact that we wouldn't be here but for the other actions by the county. Thank you. You can do it right from there. You can be in the kitchen.
You can probably make it work. Do you want to stand up here?
Oh,
No problem. Yeah.
You can start going.
I was thinking the others group.
Thank you very much.
The room. Thanks. Let me try something here. If you guys need any B-roll or anything, let us know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here.